Well, it's Kenneth Marple again, doing another response video to something released by the Atheist Voice. It's why Christians need to accept scientific realities. We're just going to look at some of the insights that Hammett provides. Obviously, this is a question of, science versus faith. I actually wrote an article about this, and I'll provide a link below, so you can check that out. But we just want to see if there is any problems with what he's suggesting, if he provides any evidence for the things that he's suggesting about science and the realities that science provides us. So let's begin. All right. The first thing I want to discuss is Hammett is suggesting that science basically has a monopoly on truth, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. And the example that he gives is Copernicus and his heliocentric model of the universe. But prior to his discovery of this, most people believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, or a geocentric model of the universe. So yes, science has done good in helping us learn more about what is real in our natural world, but it doesn't create those realities, it discovers them. And because the church didn't believe this at the time, doesn't mean that they were right in rejecting this model and calling it heretical and imprisoning Copernicus for it. It just means that the people that were in charge at during that time were wrong in doing so. All right, second point I want to bring up is that he suggests that eventually everyone will believe evolution. It's just a fact that this will happen, and that with evolution, God simply evaporates. And I argue that science cannot answer everything because it is strictly limited to the natural world. Science has a hard time answering questions about the mind or our ability for intentionality. And this is because science's realm or scope of knowledge is limited to only things that are physical or only things that are natural. And to go back to something I said I was going to bring up, his position is built on this idea of verificationism, or the verification principle, which basically states that anything that's determinative of truth, or anything that determines truth, can be empirically verified. So only things that can be empirically verified, or verified but with the five senses, can essentially count as truth. But the problem is the claim that science proves all truth, or only things are true, or only true things can be proved by science, is something that actually can't be tested by science. It's a self-defeating principle. So when you're taking this position that only things that can be verified empirically is the only determination for truth, I think you're making a giant misstep, because there's a lot of knowledge that cannot be known. You can't know metaphysical knowledge, or the big one, you can't know ethical or moral knowledge, because none of those things can actually be verified empirically or with the five senses. Also, Hammett suggests that evolution is diametrically opposed to faith or religion, and I say that it is not diametrically opposed, because evolution only explains the rise of biological life here on Earth. Evolution does not have an adequate answer for the beginning of the universe. You have naturalistic theories of the beginning of the universe, but evolution just deals with the rise of biological life. So for the sake of argument, let's say that evolution is in fact true. God could have used this mechanism to bring about the rise of biological life on Earth through a common ancestor and random genetic mutation, and that's a plausible view. So this is not something where it's an either-or thing. God could have used evolution to bring about life on the Earth. One of the things brought up in this video that I am vehemently opposed to is the statement that pastors, or just theists, see evidence pointing away from their faith and they just ignore it. This to me is calumny on a general scale, or calumny towards theists. Science is not so definitive in proving a naturalistic worldview. That is why some people believe God, or a God, had something to do with it, because science cannot answer everything. Even some of the things that science attempts to answer, it doesn't do so in a convincing way. He also suggests that proponents of intelligent design are not doing science, but they're scientists that are looking at the physical evidence, and they can't marry what they see with biological evolution. Irreducible complexity is something that is brought up, and all this is stating is that a life form had to have a certain trait fully functional from the outset, that this is not something that could have developed over time. Next, I just wanted to point out some general logical fallacies that I found in the video. I may not have found them all, but these were just the ones that I felt were pretty prominent. So the first one is ad ignorantium. This is an appeal to someone's lack of knowledge or proof concerning an issue as determinative of truth. So because somebody does not have all the knowledge, means that their position is false. And the early church may have been wrong about the center of the universe, but could very well be right in other areas. So essentially, we're just saying that if your position lacks knowledge in something, your whole position is false. The next one is a false dilemma. This occurs when one is given only two alternatives to choose from, when in fact there are at least one or more additional options. So the false dilemma here is it's either God or evolution. But as I pointed out earlier, the creator could have used evolution as his means to create. It is not necessarily one or the other. The last one is straw man. This occurs when one interprets an opposing view based upon its weakest form. It seems like he's taking a fundamentalist view of science and religion. And this is ignoring the facts with most thoughtful Christians. Most thoughtful Christians are not taking science and just ignoring its findings. Most Christians realize that science is looking at the natural world, and we believe that the natural world was created by God, so this is a way that we can learn more about who the creator is. The fundamentalists traditionally have separated themselves from modern society and anything that it finds, and hold strictly to a literalist interpretation of everything in the Bible, period, no ifs, ands, or buts. But there are subtle nuances in the Bible, and hermeneutics would be a way for you to discover how to interpret different genres and the grammatical contexts of certain things and syntax, and all of these things play an important role in understanding what the author's intent was and what he was trying to convey and what he was writing. The last thing to talk about is Hammett suggests that science is a reason that so many young people are leaving the church, and I don't think he has much or any evidence of this fact. Young people are, in fact, leaving the church, but it is not because of science. It is because they didn't take the time to intellectually and spiritually develop themselves in their worldview. And these young people are meeting intelligent atheists that are raising objections that they can't answer. And as opposed to going and finding the answers to these objections that is consistent with their worldview, they just abandon ship and pick up on another worldview. And this has nothing to do with church and science. This has everything to do with maybe the church not taking the time to develop these youth spiritually and intellectually, but it definitely has nothing to do with church and science. The church is not opposed to science. We love science. Like I said earlier, it's our view is science is letting us see attributes or characteristics of the creator. And historically, this has traditionally been the case, and Isaac Newton is an example of this. All right. I think what we see in this particular video is some bold assertions without much evidence supporting it. Also, I think there's a general lack of philosophical sophistication. That is not to say that the points aren't valid or good questions to ask, but to assert this much confidence in science is not to fully understand the subtle nuances involved in looking at the evidence. So the person who accepts an intelligent designer is not a moron throwing evidence to the side, but sees intelligence in the evidence. Just also the same as the atheist is not an idiot for accepting biological evolution, because they have strong evidence that justifies their belief in that. The only thing I wanted to point out was really the black and white mentality in this video that suggests we should just believe in science. Science is just right, and everybody has to believe anything that science has to say, when in fact there's a great deal of knowledge that cannot be answered through scientific investigation alone. I just want to call for epistemic humility in this sense, because science only can answer questions about the natural world. It can't answer metaphysical questions. It can't answer ethical questions or aesthetic questions. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe, and keep watching for some future content. Thanks for watching.